Give me a moment. Yeah, I think now everybody should be able to see the document. Good evening, Atindra. So may I request you to start with your questions and possibly go ahead explaining them. I understand that you want to explain these questions. You.
Yeah, okay. The questions, in fact, are simple and straightforward. So I have posed 3 questions, and it's something that I have been trying to find out the answers to. And I have some answers already here.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I can read the answers. That is fine.
Okay.
You can scroll a bit.
So.
Yeah, that's fine. Got it. Yeah. In fact, when I was trying to find out an answer to another question, I happened to find this one also about the space between greater than and less than.
Okay.
So that's fine.
Great. I think we will not be able to see who gave the answer. So if the person who answered this question is part of our group, right?
Yeah, you could scroll down. It's fine.
I actually posted the answer for the third one.
Which is greater than or less than?
Yeah. It was actually part of one of the style guides that I use for a journal. So
okay.
It was easier for me to find out because I have been using this.
Okay. Okay, great. So do you want to explain?
Yeah, I got that. And what about C then?
Okay.
Okay, C.
And we haven't got any answers.
Yeah, there is no
okay.
C.
No, I think it is auto.
Okay.
Bulleting NB. So the first question is punctuating the sentence, and I think that question.
So this number 2, does anyone have an answer?
Yatin, I think like I have seen p-values go in small also. I think it's basically a style issue. Like there is no, maybe I don't know what's the logic, but I have seen it go lowercase also, but not in Roman. Like most maximum.
That's one.
Maximum times I've seen it in italic only, even though it might be in lowercase. So if anyone has a different answer, they can share.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Vivek. I work with some of the publishers like Elsevier, Springer, and Wiley. So all of them have most of the times the choice is a lowercase p, but it is not always. So the cap or lowercase of p depends on the publisher you work with. And I would request if somebody has any opinion based on the style manuals like CMS or AMA. Otherwise, if there is a style sheet for your particular journal, then certainly that would contain, because this is part of some of the basic styles expected for scientific journals. So I'm sure this is captured there. Other than that, if there are any preferences based on style manuals, I would request to share that. Yatin has also asked whether about capital P or lowercase p. I think we have addressed that right now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Either way, based on the style sheet or on the style manual that you are expected to follow. If obviously if there is no style sheet or a style manual, going by consistency would be key. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, yes.
Shaifali has asked, a few articles I have edited in science category say that there is no need to italicize n, which is a variable and carries a number. It is capitalized. How authentic is this? Anyone has answer for this?
Well, I can answer part of the question she's saying about n being capitalized or not. I would say like when you are talking about the main total sample, then we use a capital N. If
Yes.
when we are using a
Yes.
sub sample, then we use a small n. But the part about Roman, I think maybe Yatin or someone else can please explain that. N being set in Roman or italic, even though like it's it has a value, it's still set in Roman. Part again, I can see maybe the part of the reason can be because it has a value, but it is fixed, it's not changing. So maybe that's why it's treated as a different kind of variable. Yatindra, can you please, would you like to elaborate on this?
Yatinji? Anybody else?
Murugraj, what is your view about this italic Roman thing?
Yeah, the first part is I agree with you. When capital N is about the size of the total population and lowercase n refers to the sample size. And I am afraid that this could be an expectation from any of the e-publishing companies we work with. In general, the logic is correct as Shaifali has identified, because it is a variable and it needs to be italicized. Okay. If we work for some of the publishing e-publishing companies like TechSet or Aptara or SPI, SPS, they have in-house tools that will capture these symbols and then automatically italicize them at the end. So it's a lot of in-house tools have been developed by these companies, and probably that's a requirement based on those in-house tools. But if it is not for any of these companies and there is no tool requirement, it is best to italicize always.
Okay.
I saw Bushra being part of the group. Maybe she can throw some light. Bushra, is there?
Yeah, Bushra is there and Yatindra is also there.
Yeah, it looks like Yatin has some, connectivity problem, possibly.
Okay.
Hi, Vivek.
Yeah, hi Bushra.
I tried to join through my laptop, but I don't know what happened. I couldn't hear anything. Then I'm joining through this mobile phone, and I don't know what have we discussed so far. Nothing. I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Right now, like we are discussing a question in which like the participant is saying that variables are usually italicized, like but when we have the sample size small n or cap n, there are sometimes instructions that it should be set in Roman. So what do you think is the logic behind that?
Oh, but the context is
Journal articles in which you have the sample size small n, like subsample size, and total sample capital N.
So I think if suppose it is distinguished with the lowercase and uppercase, then italicization, I'll follow the italicization. with the capital N and this capital N for the total sample size, and maybe the subsample in italic, lowercase italic N. Okay, so it's a matter of how one article clearly depicts everything.
So it's basically a style issue.
Yes, yes, I think so.
Okay, so as we move on to the next question. Few journals say to have variable and number closed up. For example, H is equal to 46, and not to italicize the variables, be it any. This is not followed across all side journal. Isn't it difficult to?
The question again is not clear.
Yes.
There's a...
Isn't it difficult to become familiar with such differences across journals and books? How can one become handy with editing skills? Any answers?
I couldn't get the question properly.
Bushra?
I couldn't get the question properly. It is the sound is.
The question is that suppose you have H equal to 46. So there are instructions that the equal to sign should be closed up. There should be no space on either side of equal to. And this style issue is not followed across all science journals. Yes. So how will the copy editor remember this?
He's just sharing the screen. Nothing missing. I don't know why he's doing.
This stylistic again. If suppose the journalist copy editor doesn't need to remember everything. If suppose there is no instruction, so the copy editor can create a rule, can create a specification, say that okay, fine, I am keeping the operators spaced off, and the copy editor should follow this consistently. Like see the AMA manual. In AMA manual, you'll see that probability. It is closed up with a number, and it doesn't take a zero, leading zero. So, and in another journals, I've seen that it is spaced off, like greater than and the lesser than symbol. Even this equal to symbol, this is spaced off with the probability, with the leading zero. So this is all stylistic. One has to be consistent, what I think.
No, I am sorry, on a completely unrelated note, in our online webinars WhatsApp group, I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they do not hear anything. Is the problem still persist?
I think the problem would be something related to the settings at their end, because if others are able to hear, then that means there is no problem at our end.
Yeah, because there are more than a few complaints. That's why I'm a little worried.
Okay, but maybe the screen you need to share again, because I am not able to see the screen.
Even I'm not able to see the screen. I just see Murugaraj has started screen sharing. That's all.
Okay, but you can't see this screen right now?
Yeah,
I can see your face in the corner.
Yeah, we can't see the document.
Oh, okay.
Nothing.
Can you know?
I think no. It connectivity issue or something. I don't know.
Because
you will have to stop sharing and then start sharing again.
That's exactly what I did now.
Okay.
I have shared it again. Because I'm also seeing a lot of people, moving out and joining back, probably because of audio problem. Surit is the latest person. Surit, do you hear us?
Yes, now I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, very much, very much.
All right.
And do you also see the screen shared?
No, all I see is your photograph.
Same.
It does show the messages that you have started screen sharing, but I don't see a screen. apart from your photograph.
Okay.
Anyway, as long as I can hear you speak, it's fine.
Yeah, I think just to have a workaround. I think all of you have the link for this Google Docs, right? So you can access Google Docs from your either mobile. I know it's a little clumsy to view a document in your mobile. Laptops or PCs are much better, but I think we'll manage it right now, and then we'll go ahead. We'll proceed with other questions and see what happens. I'll keep sharing the screen. Vivek, do you see the screen?
No, I am also not able to see.
Okay, then better I just remove screen sharing.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, somebody said, Chushitra said she can see the screen being shared. Okay, so what do you do? Okay, shall we go ahead with, expecting that you will be able to access the document and follow the discussions here?
Yeah, I think that's the only option. Or maybe you can try for once more.
Yeah, no harm in it. I'll do that. Any luck?
No.
All right. So I'll keep the screen shared. So people, whoever can access it, let them. Others, I request you to please manage it with your, Google Docs link, please.
There's a link.
Yeah, can you move to the next question, Murugaraj?
Okay. I think I'll take a minute or two to talk about my perspectives on question number 5. A few words to have variable and numbers closed up, not italicized, whether it is variable or not, and it is difficult to remember or become familiar with such differences. So I think that's an interesting point because we have so many manuals, right? CMS is there, AMA, APA, MLA, and AP, and a lot of state manuals are there at a larger level, very large level. And for each of the journals, most of these publishers have their own style guide and style sheets for particular journals. For example, quoting Elsevier again, has probably thousands of journals published by Elsevier. And many of these clusters of Elsevier journals will have style sheets for them. Okay, maybe 4 or 5 journals of similar nature could share a style sheet. All right. So how it is possible for an editor to switch between these different journals and still be able to maintain consistency with respect to the style sheet? That's an interesting point because I try to understand this from a different perspective. Let's take this example of having a variable equated to some value, actual value. So what are the different possibilities? One possibility is to have the variable italicized, which is the most common style requirement. I can't immediately think of anybody who would want to go other way. So a variable being italicized. And then there is a mathematical operator. It could be an equal to symbol, less than, greater than, any other thing. And the second possibility is to have spaces before and after the operator. It could be a thin space or a word space. And many of us know that a thin space is given so that at the end of a line, the variable, the operator, and the actual value, in this case, h equal to 46, all the 3 components are held together even if it goes towards the end of the line. You might also remember that the shortcut key for a thin space is control space bar, correct?
Yes.
So when you use a control space bar after h and after the equal to symbol, the 3 components h, equal to, and 46 are held together. And some of the publishers or some of the style sheets require you to use a word space and use a pagination engine to take care of these combinations, a space called non-breaking space, NBSP. Okay. So what are the possibilities here? I have a variable that can be italicized. I have an operator with a variable and a value, which means there can be a thin space or a word space. So these are the 3 possibilities, and there can be any combinations of these. So instead of trying to remember, unless I'm working for a particular journal over a long period of time, so over the period of time, I would have memorized most of these points. If I am switching between different journals, it may not be easy, or it may be very difficult to remember the styles for each of these. So at this point of time, what I should remember is that there can be a possibility for a different style with respect to this situation. When I come across a variable, an operator, and a value, there are different possibilities. At least 3 possibilities I can immediately think of. So it's time for me to check against the style sheet if there is any relevant style point here. If there are no style points, I'll apply the general style, which is variable to be italicized and an operator to take thin space on both the sides, which is a common sense style rather than a common style, because variable being italicized and the operator keeping the other 2 elements intact. Okay, that would be my next choice. So I think I have answered that. Any points related to this?
Yeah, I think you have explained it beautifully.
Thank you. Okay, so
okay. I have a certain perspective to share on this point, if I may.
Please.
Yes.
So over the past few months, or maybe a year and a half, I've been working for 4 different journals in very different fields, and they treat science in very idiosyncratic ways. Okay, so to give you an idea, there's a journal that it uses the expression et al, et li, among others, without a period, a full stop at the end of al, and it does not italicize at all. Okay. There's yet another journal which in page ranges and not in page ranges, in number ranges in the text, uses a character space on both sides of the end dash. So it's 40 space end dash space 41. Okay. Now these are so weird, at least to me, that I can't forget. But
Yes.
what I have found useful is that for every such element, such as for character spaces, I don't work for a single journal that uses a thin space or a non-breaking space. But for page ranges, for full stops at the end of abbreviations and so on, you have a spreadsheet for pretty much every element you can think of. For instance, you were talking about variables, okay? So for you, I understand it's very difficult. You work for possibly 145 journals. But let's say for an individual who works for 2 journals or 4 journals or even 6 journals, it's possible to create a spreadsheet where you have on the left column the elements that you need to treat differently for each journal, and on the rows you have the corresponding treatment written down, and you print it out and you tack it to your wall so that you have to just look up and see what you're looking for. Okay, this is a technique that I have been using because I got tired of looking up style sheets and so on. And even if you have paper, or even if you have the style sheets on your phone, it takes many seconds, if not minutes, to figure out where the information is located. So fundamentally, the point is create a spreadsheet for differences in managing particular elements across journals. Did I explain that in a way that everybody can understand?
That's really the best way, I think.
Yeah, because thinking about things when you're editing is really, I find it very difficult. And another problem that I run into is about hyphenating words. So I work for, like I said, 4 journals, and hyphenating words is a really irritating problem. Everybody says that there's no hyphenation strategy, so to speak. They don't even talk about a particular dictionary. Now, the Chicago refers to the Merriam-Webster, not the unabridged, the 11th Collegiate, which uses a very different hyphenation style than the unabridged. And for spellings, we're supposed to look up the Oxford Dictionary because that is the British English Dictionary. Now, they have a very different system of hyphenation. So what do you do? What I have done is create a separate dictionary in Word for every client, and I keep adding the correct hyphenation to that, also to perfect it, so that I don't have to think. So for instance, I'm right now looking at non-volatile prices, and I have a hyphen here, and I have checked it, and I have added it to the dictionary, so that the next time I come across non-volatile, if it is 2 words, it will automatically be flagged. So fundamentally, the point is rely on your memory less, set up systems and processes.
Excellent. Excellent. So I think the nutshell that you said, rely on your memory less and rely more on the systems is a fantastic message. On a related note, I also remember, from our earlier conversations that you use Perfect It probably extensively. I think many of these points can be included to Perfect It customized style sheets for different publishers or journals, and we can use them for consistency at the end. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
I have been using Perfect It since 2000, I don't know when, 9 or 10 or 11, something like that. Okay. And last year, when they moved to the annual payment version, I got a little bit nervous for 2 reasons. Is that I had earlier imagined that this was a one-time only deal, and now they're talking about paying every year. Now, fortunately, I can afford to pay $49 a year, but then Perfect It forced on the system. I had 4 GB of RAM and I had Word 2013, I think. Now I have 32 GB RAM machine and so on and so forth, and it was working fine. But then I thought that maybe it's not a very sensible way of using plugins and add-ins and macros and so on. Why not use the inherent capabilities, Word's inherent capabilities, and figure out a way of doing things without these crutches? The other concern with Perfect It is that every time in a conversation like this, where other people are listening in and not all of them use Perfect It or need to use Perfect It, it's I think that we need to be talking about tools that are free and open source and part of Word. I mean, this is a very new development in my life. I have been thinking about free and open source and easily accessible inherent built-in tools for the past year only. Until then, I used to swear by Perfect It. I still use Perfect It twice, before and after I run a document, but that's a separate issue. The point is that we really need to be talking about free and open source tools and inherent capabilities. I have been trying over the past year to understand how Word operates. It's funny that it took me so long to focus on that. And it does really offer many, many ways of doing things. I really think we should focus on that. But to answer your question, yes, it is very much possible to customize Perfect It to run all these tests in whatever sequence you like. Add in wildcard searches in the fine-tuning or the wildcards section and run these tests, and I do it. I rely on it terribly, and so much that I have been wondering about the wisdom of relying on Perfect It so much. So there you have it.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Surit. If there are no further questions on that, we can move on to the next one.
There are 2 questions on MS Word addressed to you, so maybe you can take them up.
I think we still have time. We can move to that. So I think there's one more question by Shaifali about, again, styles.
Okay.
She said, I have done freelancing projects for AMA and APA styles and was told to remove then in parallelism with if in a sentence. So in positions like if then, remove then is a instruction. But if you do not, sorry, but we do not follow it as a rule, though I was told that it is a rule for scientific journals. On the contrary, if you introduce changes in any other editing projects that we're working on, we are told that it is an unnecessary change. Kindly revert. Any comments? Anyone else who has similar requirements like with parallel constructions? This is more like to me it looks like asking to remove redundancy.
This is actually removing redundancy. That's all.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's not grammatically wrong, but even without then, the sentence is okay. It's not
because I remove then unless the sentence is it sounds unclear. I remove it.
Yeah, I have seen, especially with respect to scientific journals, a lot many words are changed, like in order to. I can immediately think of due to the fact that is changed to become. So on and so forth. I think this is more because, especially this is so much in scientific journals, and I think the only logic behind it is to avoid redundancy or to cut down unnecessary words.
Cut down, yes.
Shaifali, if you are there, please ask if there are any related questions. I saw you disconnecting and then getting back again. You are there? Shaifali? I can see that she is there.
Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Hi, sir. Thank you for answering. Actually, I was not able to hear earlier. I tried disconnecting and reconnecting, but I'm able to hear.
You were able to follow?
Now the screen is visible to me. The voice is not clear. It's disturbing, but I can see the screen. I can hear a little bit of the conversation.
Okay. So probably we'll add our answers after the session is over, and then make this document available to everybody.
Yes, I think we all need to review this recorded session to understand the answers to all the questions that are going to be answered, so that we can actually understand.
Yeah, sure. So the next question is, I need to know which version of MS Word should be used while editing. I face issues with 2010. Again, Nivedita, are you here? So probably you can share what is the issue that you are facing. I think we have moved away from 2010 sometime back, 2013 and then to 2016. Currently, 2019 is also available, but I understand that 2013 and 2016 are popular versions right now. 2010 seemed to be more of an intermediate version between 2007 and 2013. Especially, we find a lot of difficulties in terms of compatibility between 2007 and 2010 or beyond. Okay, if we work with publishers, e-publishing companies that has in-house tools, if 2007 version does not have an SP3, Service Pack 3, if it is not installed, then there is a huge risk of spaces between words getting lost. I have seen instances of at least 2 instances where the entire document lost the word space. So there is only one single big word for 15 pages. So we realized after a lot of diagnostics between the freelancer. I was then full-time. I mean, I was working full-time as a manager. So we had a lot of discussions with the freelancer, and finally we were able to zero in on that. The issue was because the freelancer used a 2007 version,
Yes.
SP2 without an SP3, but then the companies have moved to 2010 or beyond. So that incompatibility created this issue. So if you have a 2007 with a service pack 3 installed, most of the times you wouldn't have a problem. But it is better to move on to at least 2016, because there has been a lot of advantages in 2016 and 2019 over the earlier versions. I think one of the later questions by Michelle is also about which version to use. Probably we can have a dedicated session on the differences and the similarities between various versions, the recent versions. So if you do not have any binding from your customer about a particular version, it is better to go with 2016. It's more of my personal preference because of recent changes, because I think 2013 is the version we started having ribbon and customization of all these things. So it becomes more user friendly. If you can, 2016 would be a good choice. Any other comments from your personal experience?
Okay, Murugaraj, I have a question for anybody who can answer it. So I have been using 2019 for a while now, and I have noticed that when I copy and paste a word, what happens is that the character space that used to be copied and pasted earlier is not copied or pasted. So for instance, I copy a word, let's say theory, from one sentence and I want to paste it somewhere else. It's pasted all right, but the corresponding character space that used to be copied earlier is not copied or pasted now. Has anybody noticed this? Does anybody have anything to say how to say on this or how to fix this problem?
This can be an issue with any version, Surit. One way to fix this is go to the options and then under general, you will have options about copy paste, cut, copy and paste. If you can just, I'm having 2016 version, but I'm sure that it is fairly similar to 2019. I can share the, give me a moment. Okay, so I am sharing my Word document. Are you able to see that now?
Just give me a moment. No, I can't see your screen, but you know what? I'll figure this out later on the phone with you.
Okay, so to give an answer now for the benefit of others, in a Word document, okay, so you can go to the options page. There is a file at the beginning of the ribbon, file, and then options, and then you will have a list of options to choose from, and in proofing or display, you should be able to see, or is it advanced?
I'm looking at display, advanced. Proofing, save language.
And okay, advanced options.
Yes.
Okay, so there should be an option to select the space along with the word.
Sorry, say that again, please.
I mean, there's under in advanced.
Use smart cut and paste.
Under cut, copy and paste.
Yeah, use smart cut and paste. There's a settings there.
There is a settings, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can go to the settings and see adjust paragraph spacing on paste. There are other options.
Okay.
So you should be.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Welcome. So I'm sharing the screen again. So to give an answer to Nivedita Sheel, one word, a later version would always be welcome because you'll have more features. And the more older it is, more riskier because uh, the compatibility issues and service pack, I mean, it is no longer maintained by Microsoft. So you will not have any support over a period of, after a period of time. So 2016 is the choice that you can rely on. 2019 is available. I haven't worked with 2019 yet, but Surit here is already working on it. So 2016 or 19 could be a good choice for anybody, irrespective of whether you're working directly with authors or with any of these e-publishing companies. You will not have any problem. There are a couple of questions by Mr. Ravi Chetri. I work for an edtech company, but they are yet to adopt a uniform formatting style for their content. We work across diverse domains. Which formatting style should I suggest to my employer? MLA, APA, AMA, or CMS? I would request anyone to answer this.
I think a lot will depend on the field, the kind of content that is being edited. Suppose it's like chemistry content, you have a different manual, like American Chemical Society. If something related to psychology and other things, then you have the American Psychological Association, APA manual. For medical content, you have American Medical Association manual. Again, something related to life sciences, we have the CBE manual. So it depends on the field or the content. So I think he has to be specific about what kind of content his company is editing.
Yeah.
And I think he mentioned ed tech. So if it's something related to technology, then a style manual that deals with that particular domain.
Okay, my understanding was that the tech company was something that is involved in, or is something that is involved in creating online content for the K-12 education or higher education requirements.
Okay.
So you rightly said, based on the discipline, or at least a majority of the work carried out by them, should decide one. CMS is, somebody has replied that Chicago Manual of Style is used by most publishing firms since it has generic rules as per my understanding. I think I agree with this also, because Chicago is more generic in nature and can be adapted to any publisher. On the other hand, were listed above and attested to by Vivek are specific to their subject matter. Therefore, you can choose either of them based on majority of the work carried out by your company. The next question is, are the Economist Style Guide and the University of Oxford Style Guide good enough for a B2B company? I do not have any idea about this. So
Yatindra will be the best person to answer this if he is hearing us, because I think he uses both of these.
Oh, great. Is The Economist more for the Indian newspaper industry? Is my understanding correct?
Maybe Surit can answer that.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the conversation. What was the question, please?
The question was, are the Economist Style Guide and the University of Oxford Style Guide good enough for a B2B company, business to business company? So I was adding that my understanding is that Economist is more for the newspaper industry in India. Is my understanding correct? Was my sub question.
Well, I frankly don't know anybody who uses the Economist or the Oxford Style Guide. As a matter of fact, I spent a brief amount of time at OUP about 15 years back, and they weren't using the OUP strictly, the Oxford Style Guide very strictly. And I don't know how many people use The Economist in this country. But I can tell you this, whenever you're thinking about a style guide or applying a style, it's good to think of two things. One is, what is the pre-existing style? That is to say, if the business has been in existence for a while, what is the style that they have followed, however unwittingly, over the past year or two? Look at that, draw it up according to the usual style elements, and have it okayed by a client. There will be individual preferences. And then look at which style guide is closest to that. So use that style guide and note the differences as and when you need to use them. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
And if Ravi Chetri is part of the right now, probably add or share his questions, comments. No, it looks like he's not part of the team now. So we'll add that part and see. And I think there are a couple of comments related to this. Swati mentioned that it was more like a word preference by certain journals. So, and journalists use economist style guide. So I think magazines, irrespective of whether it is B2B or B2C, both B2B and B2C can use the economist. Yatin asked what type of business it is. So I think his question was more like what business rather than what is B2B. And Suchitra added that most of the reputed media houses in India have their own style sheets. B2B or any other firm uses a language that the target readers audience understand. Okay. Again, there's no one clear answer or there is no skewing toward any particular answer, but these are the thoughts shared by people which will collate for the entire team.
You know, I'll make one brief point and then shut up. I was looking at the questions on the Google Sheet, and I was noticing a certain tendency here, or rather a fundamental assumption. The assumption is that there are norms and practices followed universally across firms or segments within industries or even in industries. What I have realized is that the reality is the exact opposite of that. There is no norm, no system that is followed universally, even for certain publications, that is to say governments or publishers. Not all styles are followed all the time correctly. So the point is, for each project or each client or each type of publication, you need to work out, the editor needs to work out what would work best in that scenario in terms of whatever you think, layout, page margins, spellings, hyphenation, and then get it okayed before you start working on it. And note whatever deviation. So for instance, you say that any word that begins with the word non should be should not be hyphenated. Okay, no hyphens, closed up. And then you come across the word non-native. And then, you know, it's a little hard to read. So you think you stick in a hyphen there because it's easier for the reader. So you note that down. You know, if you use this and if you accept that it's a little hard to have systems, you know, my cousin used to work in insurance, and he used to say that the first thing when you do, if you buy insurance, is read the exclusions. What doesn't apply, what you're not getting for your money. So for every rule, or so to speak, for every guideline, I mean, there are hundreds or at least a few exclusions, things that do not apply. So you have to look at it holistically. You have to look at what the purpose is and why you're doing what you're doing and adapt accordingly. So that wasn't brief, but I'll shut up now.
But that's a wonderful insight that I share with, I completely agree with Surit. because there are a lot of rules that we have come across and equal number of exceptions for those rules. Even when you say rule, they are not simply rules. They come with a lot of exceptions and where something can go wrong. Get this, your answer earlier observation that you have to understand a particular rule from a holistic perspective. What are the various possibilities and why these possibilities? I think I strongly believe that most all of these style manuals, each of these style manuals devised these so-called rules with some concept behind it. So if you try to understand the logic behind these rules, I'm sure 90 to 95% of these rules will fall under some logic. So when the logic is understood, it is very easy for us to remember the exceptions, or it is very easy for us to think of a situation where you have to break a particular rule and then use something completely against. I can immediately think of an example from CMS where the normal rule is not to have a comma between the subject and a verb unless there is a parenthetical break. Okay, but I can possibly recall a sentence from CMS that exactly uses a comma to separate the subject and the verb. She opened the door, looked at the man and gasped or something like that. Okay, so if the word gasped, I mean that there was a comma before gasped, without the comma, the meaning would be completely different. If you can give me a minute, I mean, I'm just trying to open my copy. I have noted this example. Okay, the sentence reads like this. She recognized the man who entered the room and gasped. Okay, if it is good for everybody, I will copy that and paste it into the chat box. Where is my chat box? Okay, so you should all be able to see a sentence now. Can you? She recognized the man who entered the room and gasped. Okay, there is a comma before and gasped. If the comma is missing, if the comma is not there, or if the comma is not there in this particular sentence, she recognized the man who entered and gasped. So the reaction would go to the man. But if you use a comma here, the reaction would go to the main subject, she. So you cannot say, even if with the comma, we are separating the subject she and gasped, but at the same time, the comma is important if we wanted to convey the meaning that she is the person, the lady who opened the door is the person who gasped also. So this violates a basic rule defined for a comma, not to separate a subject and a verb, but still conveys the intended meaning. So this is very important to understand. You cannot simply blindly apply a particular rule. Sometimes you have to understand the reason behind a rule and break it so that the intended meaning is conveyed.
So Murugaraj, in one sentence, it is all about knowing the manuals, the specifications, style, everything.
Mm-hmm.
You should. So it is required that you know the specifications, the style points, the journal, what the journal says to follow, whatever. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you should know when not to follow. So this is the thumb rule. Like you should actually, an editor should know when not to follow a style point. And then you should be able to convince the client. If the client questions, then you should be able to answer with a specific logic.
Yes.
Agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And very good example given by Murugaraj.
Yes.
And that's in CMS anyway.
Yeah.
To CMS team.
Yeah, but you took it from here. I think you can take up one more question because it's related to MS Word, and then you can wrap up the session.
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes, right? So Michelle has asked whether, her question is, most authors do not use the styling options in Word. The editor has to edit each style related issue separately. they cannot do it holistically with a bird's eye view. Would you recommend that an editor first prepare or make changes to the document so that it can be used in the outline view and then begin editing? Won't that eat into the editor's editing time? Okay, so there are two things that are involved in editing. One is setting up something, setting up the document for editing. The other one is actual editing. All right. So many a times it's more like a personal preference. When for me, if the document is clearly organized, when I say organized, I should be able to identify the style of a particular paragraph. Is it a title? Is it a heading? Or is it a figure caption or a table caption? Probably I'm so used to looking at these with styles applied over the last 15 years, probably. I find it very easy to pick errors when they are in place, okay, when this entire document is properly structured. The question of whether we should spend time on that, because every minute is precious for an editor, but in my experience, the time that an editor spends in styling a document is certainly not comparable to the kind of benefits that we would accrue from such styling. Okay, again, it is not a compulsory thing. It's more like a decluttering logic propagated by the Zen principle. I have read a couple of blogs by Babu Atta. Okay, so the more clear your workspace is, the more productive you are. The more organized a particular document is, a much better quality that you can derive out of it is what I strongly believe. Okay, without that, you can still be able to identify errors. You can still be able to be close to perfection. It is not that this is the only way to achieve perfection. But I found that in my experience personally and with my teams, when the document is structured, finding errors is easier. Okay, so if you ask me, would you recommend styling a document before editing? Yes, every single time I would do that. If it is a 400-page document, styling the document itself will take around 3 to 4 hours. Yes, but think of the time that you spend or that you should spend in going through the different headings to ensure consistency. As I told the other day, our mind shifting between a basic rule-based style point, like a preposition beyond 4 words should be capitalized. Do you think that it is humanly possible for a person to skim through 400 pages, identify every single heading, and then identify the prepositions in these headings, check against this rule, and lowercase a preposition or an uppercase a preposition based on this style? It becomes very difficult. On the other hand, this styling can save a lot of time because it brings all the style in heading level 1 or 2 together in one place. So going through them is our mind, at least my mind, doesn't switch between finding the head level, looking for a preposition, and then deciding whether it needs an uppercase or a lowercase, because skimming through the document has been ruled out because I have all the headings in one place. So I'll quickly go through each of the things. My mind focuses only on the capitalization in a particular line. So it's more efficient for me personally, and I have seen that working for my teams also previously. So my answer would be that the time that you spend on styling a document would certainly make up, in fact, provide more benefit in terms of ensuring consistency and applying style sheet requirements. I think that's it from me. I think we are also close to 5 o'clock. As Vivek said, we will stop at this point and then take further questions, either in our groups. Probably we can start adding more answers to these questions so that this document evolves over a period of time, and take these questions in our next call, Q&A call, and discuss this further.
Yeah, thanks Murugaraj for managing the session.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks everyone who attended and took out time from the schedules. It was a very enriching session. See you next Sunday. Next Sunday we will have a session on financial planning. which I think is very vital for freelance editors. So I hope you all will be there and others who are part of the group will also join.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.